We've now roped in Senior Training Coordinator and Researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Willem Els. Willem, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. I want to start with our developing news coverage at the Hennops River. The discovery where the 3 bodies of the missing police officers were found, including 2 more bodies, as we've just indicated. What do we read to this situation and the scale of this investigation?
Good afternoon to you, Nati. Yeah, I think it is a massive scale. If you look at the amount of resources, of manpower, and everybody that has been deployed in order to solve this case, we must commend the police for doing so. And also, you know, when some of the thin blue line are under attack or under pressure, and we have to find out what happened, of course, it is good that the police release those resources. They are the only ones that stand between us and anarchy, and we have to protect them, and we also have to look after them. Not to say that the other people are not important, but due to the pressure and also the profile of this case, what we saw, the police released all the different resources that they have. But we also see very encouraging how all the different other government departments, the other provincial departments, but also the private sector that came in and assisted, as the Commissioner mentioned. And that is all a reflection on the new breeze that we see within the police after we have the new Minister of Police, where part of his strategy is to pool resources and expertise with the private sector and other organizations in order to fight the crime wave in South Africa. So that is what we see here. We see that they are very thorough. What we also saw on the video footage from day one, that the crime scene management, the crime scene preservation, they did their best to do so, even though it was very difficult with the profile of this case. Yeah. And another thing, Unati, that we also, you know, we can't single out any unit, but you know, the danger, but also the circumstances in which our police divers operated in this river. You know, when the car, over the period that this car ended up in the river, it was in flood. And they had to risk their life to go in, and they spent a lot of time in the water. It's quite cold. And another thing is, we must remember, it's not like when you're in open water where you can see. Here it is dark water. They can't see 1 inch in front of them, so they have to do everything by feeling, and I think they're doing a good job. They are going to continue, because you never stop until you have discovered everything, and you make sure before you leave the scene that all the different leads and evidence has been recovered.
Yeah, and I mean, they were meticulous, police also being meticulous in terms of how they were approaching the scene, and in terms, as you also rightfully say, in terms of the divers, dangerous waters. We saw, of course, how, you know, free-flowing that particular river is. I want to touch now on the investigations. I mean, it was important that the National Police Commissioner clarify a number of things. He says that they are still, though, investigating a case of culpable homicide. He says the investigation continues, even though at this stage they cannot see anything sinister as far as the autopsies are concerned. I mean, he also said, of course, it looks like the car may have capsized first before hitting that embankment on that road and then ultimately crashing in the river. Just give us a sense then of what that investigation would entail.
Okay, you know, the Commissioner is in a very difficult position, because he's under obligation to keep the public informed, and also to take them into his confidence. But he's also under pressure to maintain the integrity of the scene, but also the investigation. And I think he did a great job to inform the public as far as he could. And what we will see now, it's like a puzzle. When you're a good investigator or investigating team, you gather all the different pieces of the puzzle, and then slowly you start to fit them piece by piece by piece, and at the end of the day, that is going to create the big picture for you. And that is why he said, you know, now it looks like culpable homicide, so okay, that is the one thing. But we're not going to rule out any other crime. As we keep on discovering new evidence, new physical evidence, new information, etc., and we start to build that puzzle, at the end of the day, we will be able to say, okay, here was crime involved, there was no crime involved, it's only an accident. Did the vehicle capsize before it was there? Okay, they say there are initial indications, but what he also mentioned is that he's got engineers with your accident unit. They're going to do a thorough test, they're going to do some investigation on that, and they will then inform the investigators on their findings, and all of that, at the end of the day, is going to complete that puzzle.
I want us to touch on another matter that we are also covering here on the SABC News channel, a concern rather of, kidnapping and human trafficking in South Africa. Of course, you will recall another 44 Ethiopian nationals suspected to be victims of human trafficking have been rescued at Parkmore, north of Johannesburg, believed to have been kept, against their will. Just speak to us about this particular case and what are we currently seeing here now? Is this a form of another rapid crime increase, especially when we start talking about kidnappings and hijackings?
Yeah, unfortunately. So, it's a third major incident involving Ethiopians this year alone. Last year, there were also a few. Every time you've got 40, up to 100. There was more than 100. So if you look at your kidnapping and you kidnap for ransom in the first place, that is, kidnap for ransom only make out a very small percentage of all your kidnappings that take place in South Africa. If we look at the last decade, we saw that kidnappings for ransom, it quadrupled by 260%. It shot up. But there are different types. Your first type is your kidnap for ransom. We've got about two to three cases per day on average over the last period of statistics. But we have about 51 people per day that are being kidnapped in South Africa. Those are family feuds, children being kidnapped, but also your express kidnappings, where people are being hijacked and they are kidnapped while they extorting them for money from their phones, or they take them to the auto teller to draw the money. But on this one here, it is very important. The majority of the victims seem to have come from one country, and that is Ethiopia. Now, in our research and in our following this case, it's an ongoing process that we are having at the moment. We see that the syndicates, the kingpins, they are based in Kenya. They have three different modus operandi that they have. First of all, you've got your human smuggling or people smuggling. Those people pay up to $10,000 to these syndicates to transport them and transfer to South Africa, that they can become illegal aliens here, and then they can find their own way and they can do their job. Secondly, you have those people who are trafficked. They are lured by the syndicate, and they come with a promise of work and a lot of these things. But by the time they come here, they are locked up, and then they are sold to sweatshops and et cetera, to some of the syndicates. The third one is when these people actually are approach these syndicates, and then the syndicates tell them, okay, when we take you to South Africa for this time of period, you will have to work for us. Once you've completed your duties and your dues and paid your dues, we will release you. So that's a modus operandi that these people are doing, and they are ruthless, and they are extremely active in South Africa as well. Absolutely.
Willem, thank you so much for your time and, of course, your insights. That is a Senior Training Coordinator and Researcher at the Institute of Security Studies, Willem.